Hello, this is Craig Brelsford with Red Chip Companies. Thank you for joining today's event with Mixed Martial Arts Group, which trades on the New York Stock Exchange American under the ticker MMA. With us today, we have Nick Langton, founder and chief executive officer of Mixed Martial Arts Group. We will begin with a brief presentation in a moment, and then we will answer your questions. You may submit a question at any time. Click the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Before we begin, please allow me to read the Safe Harbor Statement. This call may contain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. All statements pertaining to future financial and/or operating results, along with other statements about the future expectations, beliefs, goals, plans, or prospects expressed by management, constitute forward-looking statements. Any statements that are not historical facts should also be considered forward-looking statements. Of course, forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties. I now turn this webinar over to Nick. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Craig, and thank you for all the investors, existing investors and prospective investors who've joined the call today. I look forward to getting through the formal presentation fairly briskly. Obviously, just reminding everybody of exactly what we're building here, our progress to date, particularly over the last 12 months, and then obviously jump into Q&A, and I look forward to as many questions as we can get through, so please type those questions through. In starting today, obviously I'm really pleased to be talking to everyone off the back of an announcement we made before markets open today, which talks about, you know, the really significant sales momentum and growth trajectory that we've started calendar 25 with. In fact, as we mentioned to the market today, you know, growth is now sitting at over 200% year on year for program sales, which is, you know, at this point in time, which is the core revenue arm of the business. We're on track to exceed total FY24 gross sales within the first quarter of calendar 25, which is really pleasing. And on top of this, we've also got two fantastic new revenue engines that are uncounted in that revenue outcome that we reported on this morning, which is of course our acquisitions of Hype.co and BJJ Link, which are really powerful B2B subscription revenue businesses that I'm going to be touching on in more detail. So, and I think the other really exciting part from our perspective is we're only in the very, very early stages of our rollout with UFC Gym, which moves into accelerated phase of program rollouts in the coming months. So again, that talks to more materially more revenue upside. So again, the business has started the year really strongly. In fact, the best we ever have, and we're excited to have, you know, what we know will be our best year ever. So moving into the presentation, I just wanted to remind you know, everybody of some of the core elements of what we are building and the problem that we are solving for. So as we know, the problem for the sector for martial arts and combat sports globally is fragmentation. So there has been absolutely explosive growth. You know, we know obviously through the growth of the UFC, the massive is really driven massive growth in participation, fan base growth. But despite all that, you know, the sector remains really disorganized and underserved. It is significantly comprised of owner operators and small businesses. And so the challenge that we face into, and the huge opportunity for us, is to really build this cultural and commercial epicenter for MMA and combat sports. And so by, you know, curating the global MMA scene into a really unified and accessible hub to connect fans with training experiences both online and in gym, to build the most valuable community platforms and fan hubs, you know, we're really able to capture the momentum that's being driven by the massive success on the professional side of the sport, and enable all the small businesses that sit underneath that to monetize through increased fan participation. And so that's what we're building. This is about sector aggregation. This is about building the ecosystem that is going to bring all these parts together of what is a very large sector, as we know, but is, enormously fragmented. And so how are we doing that? Well, first and foremost, we're doing it through the best training experiences. So program sales, putting people into gyms to train in our programs, to obviously enable those gyms to monetize in ways they haven't before, to onboard those customers, to collect their subscriptions, to retain our split, and to pay the gyms and give them those really valuable additional revenue streams, to provide them with the best business tools to run their business, the best marketing support, the best digital engagement in terms of connecting with their core, with their core customer base, and really enable those small businesses to run in the most efficient way possible, and run their business in a manner that not only makes customer acquisition easy, but certainly builds in enormous amount of strength around customer retention. So really all the elements that help drive the economics of those businesses. What else? It's about providing the best digital fan experience. It's about providing the best MMA social platform, which I'm going to get to the latest update on later in the deck. And then, of course, formulating those best industry partnerships, which clearly we have through the top talent we've assembled, the amazing partnership with UFC Gym, and of course, then all the other wonderful gyms that form part of our network around the world. So again, remembering our audience, over 640 million global fans of MMA. Variously, you'll see that number reported is up to 700 million. The sport just continues to grow and grow globally. You've got millions and millions of people actively training combat sports in the US, spending in the vicinity of $20 billion annually. But again, that money is being sprinkled across in excess of 50,000 individually owned martial arts gyms in the United States. Again, it speaks to a vast revenue ecosystem, but again populated by a huge number of small business owners. And so this again speaks to our goal of sector aggregation and connecting the fan with the underlying opportunity for training in gym and online. And so how are we doing this through our platform reach? Well, number one, we are tapping into a global culture. In that regard, combat sports, is truly universal, around the world. And we're seeing that with both with the UFC and, of course, all the other major promotions, running events in the Middle East, in Europe, obviously North America. We have a huge UFC event this weekend in Sydney, Australia. Again, the universality of the sport is just continues to grow. And from our perspective, what have we continued to build on? Well, the reach we've built under MMA Inc. Again, 5 million social media followers. We have over 560,000 user profiles across our platform, over 18,000 published gym profiles, of which 800 are active gym partners of ours. And we have over 50,000 active students, being monetized on our platform. So again, a really significant first mover advantage when it comes to being focused on aggregating this sector from a participation standpoint and a grassroots standpoint. In terms of the ecosystem, again, if you think about the core cohorts we've mentioned, fans, participants, coaches, and partners, we've got a value proposition for all of those, and that value proposition then leads into a very straightforward monetization opportunity. So fans, obviously the value proposition is content, news, community, stay up to date. Monetization is through premium app subscription, curated merchandise store, all those other elements. And a big part of that is obviously going to be delivered in the coming weeks with the next stage of mixedmartialarts.com, which I'm going to talk to all of you about in a few moments in the presentation. Then, of course, participants, and this is absolutely the core of the revenue engine of the business, and as what has performed so wonderfully for us in quarter one, and that is that people are paying a training subscription to do our programs in our gym footprint around the world. And typically that subscription for in-gym training will be in the vicinity of $400 to $550 per month. And of course, coaches, as I mentioned, we've got all the tools to manage and grow their business. Our gym management platform, obviously that's SaaS revenue as well as transaction revenue for all the transactions that occur on the platform. And obviously all the additional elements we offer coaches, around marketing support and the ability to grow their business. And then from there, as the ecosystem continues to build, a really big opportunity to onboard a lot of partners who are looking to access this audience of the sport, and how we will leverage our existing footprint of 5 million social media followers and over 500,000 user profiles to really enable opportunities around sponsorship and other partnerships. We've touched on this before. Obviously, what will be from a revenue attribution standpoint, what is delivered so strongly for us in first quarter this year, and will continue to grow with increased programs and activity through the year, is both our traditional programming, the Train Alta program that's run in all our independent gyms, and then our rollout with UFC Gym, of which we're a few gyms into what is ultimately 150 plus gym rollout. And that relationship, as well as UFC Gym looks to launch a range of new products, they're also talking to us about effectively tying up our product and value proposition to the core new product they're taking to market. So we're only at the very, very earliest stages of realizing the growth opportunity with UFC Gym, but it's already working extremely well. I touched on before our acquisition of BJJ Link. We announced this back in December. Enormously exciting acquisition. What we believe is the best boutique martial arts software on the planet. We'd scoured the market and we'd looked at a lot of solutions. We've obviously, with relationships with a huge number of gyms, we know what the sector is desperately crying out for. We were able to find an amazing product with a very talented founder who's now joined our business and leads product and engineering for us now. And this is obviously a traditional SaaS style product, with various monthly pricing tiers for the businesses to pay. It also has opportunities for those businesses to publish and sell their own training and programming and online courses and masterclasses, of which we can obviously publish and take a split from those. And it also came ready with its own social network for, specifically for jiu-jitsu. So a huge amount of overlap with what we're doing with mixedmartialarts.com. So from that perspective, we've acquired a really important piece of our overall tech roadmap. And as I say, all the growth numbers I talked about from a revenue standpoint in first quarter, none of that includes the revenue that we're already getting from BJJ Link as it continues to grow. And the business grew over, to the end of January, it grew over 40% year on year. We've got significant stretch targets in that growth for calendar 25. So a very, very attractive acquisition, also done on tremendous terms, structured over a number of years, with all the consideration being through stock, because we've acquired a business with a talented founder who believes in the enormous growth opportunities within that. As I mentioned before, we're revitalizing mixedmartialarts.com. This is enormously exciting. Remember, this mixedmartialarts.com is the preeminent place and domain for combat sports and martial arts from a fan experience standpoint. Historically, it had always filled that role. We acquired the business in late 2023 in an all stock deal, and we've been investing in that considerably since, in the lead up to what will be a very exciting launch of mixedmartialarts.com, supported by a new app. And the app delivers a full social media experience for the global combat sports community. The app will be delivered on iOS and Android, but not just an incredible social experience. It will also deliver a straight connectivity to the commerce of the industry. So gym finders, the ability to sell our programs, this is where the next big piece of the puzzle comes together for us in terms of really converting this 700 million global fans of MMA into underlying participants from a training, fitness, and hobbyist standpoint. So, with the launch of this being imminent, the new app, the new social media platform, this will once again become the absolute destination for combat sports globally. And it's something that we know through talking to fans and again, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of user profiles, a huge desire for there to once again be this real epicenter in terms of combat sports from both a commercial and fan standpoint. So, really excited about our progress in the lead up to that launch. In terms of our North Star growth metric and the thing that we obsess on every day, it is actually really simple. It's hours trained, because hours trained relates straight through to monetization and revenue growth for us. So from our perspective, more fans into the network, more fans following the sport ultimately means more participation. More participation, then leads to more mat time. That means more members. More members means more transactions, and more transactions means more revenue. So in terms of what we think about every single day, opening and starting new programs, expanding our gym footprint, continuing to market the sport to attract beginners and curious fans to get in the gym and train on the mats, we're able to clip the ticket on every single piece of activity. So it means, in a very simplified commercial way, our North Star growth metric is really clear, and that is simply hours trained. Our competitive advantage I've spoken about before, but the key things from my perspective is obviously, clear first mover advantage. We're the only business that is solely focused on the aggregation of mixed martial arts and combat sports at a grassroots level. The aggregation of broadcast rights has happened, and the UFC is the overwhelming winner, and they've done an incredible job. But this is a huge opportunity. So of course we've leveraged very strong relationships with the UFC, our commercial partnership with UFC Gym, partnerships with all the key UFC on-air talent like Daniel Cormier, like Laura Sanko, and then of course having this underlying platform of mixedmartialarts.com to really connect the fan audience with these incredible gyms and coaches globally. These are assets that other businesses cannot replicate and don't have. And so as we bring them all together, that's really why we've started our year so incredibly strongly. So if I again just touch on summary achievements for 2024, post the IPO, we obviously we've expanded our service. So if you think now the metrics, we now have over 50,000 active students on our payments platform. We have over 18,000 gyms published across all our platforms, with 802 of those being active and monetized locations. And our footprint now expands across 16 countries. So in that respect, we are truly global. We've really deepened our partnership with UFC Gym. Plans to launch our programming into over 150 of their locations. We've started with the first 3 locations. We've got the next 10 lined up and ready to go in the coming weeks. And then we move on an accelerated rollout from there. So we've really only scratched the surface of how lucrative and valuable our partnership with UFC Gym will be. Obviously, the other big thing we've done this year is launched these really attractive new revenue streams that relate to B2B SaaS revenue. So with the acquisition of Hype, and which we announced in late May, and then the really critical acquisition of BJJ Link in December, we've acquired 2 businesses with existing monthly B2B SaaS subscriptions, and the opportunity for us to grow those very significantly as we connect those with our B2B, our B2C subscription revenue as well. We've strengthened leadership within from an industry standpoint. So obviously having UFC Gym CEO Adam Sedlak and UFC Gym founder Mark Masterov joined our advisory board, which has really been enormously valuable as we look to accelerate that relationship with UFC Gym and really expand the monetization really quickly during 2025. And then finally, the rebrand to Mixed Martial Arts Group. This was a natural part of the journey, really aligns our mission with becoming that unifying brand for the entire combat sports sector. And in line with the upcoming relaunch of mixedmartialarts.com, there is no doubt that now with the name of the business, obviously with our stock ticker, and then all our core domains, mixedmartialarts.com and MMA.inc, everything is now fully aligned and positions the business extremely well. And then finally, what's our growth focus for this coming year? Well, obviously to continue the incredible sales momentum and revenue momentum we've started the year with. So that's really exciting. The launch of mixedmartialarts.com, the underlying social media apps, and that new integrated fan platform, that is a huge thing that's on the way in the coming weeks that we're very excited for. Really accelerating the rollout with UFC Gym, continuing to accelerate the rollout of our traditional Train Alta product into an expanded number of independently owned gyms, so that continues at pace throughout this year. And then look at all the other ways to continue to monetize a platform engagement. So, we've got big plans that are already in the works around sponsorship and other partnerships as it relates to companies who want to get access to that really large and powerful user base of customers, followers, and fans that we've already grown. And then, of course, expanding regionally. Well, as I mentioned, post the acquisition of BJJ Link, which expanded our territory footprint, will continue to expand regionally and internationally, and continue to grow that footprint. So that's 2025. Again, very simple. Continue the amazing revenue growth trajectory, expand the footprint, focus very much on the rollout of UFC Gym, and of course delivery of the social media platform and the revitalization of mixedmartialarts.com. So with that in mind, I'm going to come back, Craig, to go to Q&A if I can.
Yes, thank you very much, Nick. We can reach Nick by using the Q&A box. Access it by clicking Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom window, and then type in your question. I will read it aloud for Nick, who will then answer it. We have several questions already, Nick. I saw John Kavanaugh was invited to the inauguration for Donald Trump. Do you think the new administration will be supportive of MMA?
That's a good question. Look, we certainly know, I think, something particularly from a US standpoint, that as a sport and a sector, mixed martial arts is incredibly well positioned with the new administration. Obviously, Dana White is extremely close to President Trump. I think what it has certainly done has shone a torch even more clearly on the sector. And, no doubt, my business partner, John Kavanaugh, who was invited alongside with one of our investors, Conor McGregor, to attend all the inauguration and the festivities, led to some incredible introductions and contacts. So we're very grateful to have those very senior relationships and contacts, and we will be looking forward to using those as best we can to grow the prominence of what we're building at MMA, which again, it was interesting. John spent some time with Robert F. Kennedy and obviously the focus on health, fitness, and wellness. I mean, the core mission of our company is to get as many people, 700 million fans of MMA, involved in practical fitness and hobbyist training in mixed martial arts and combat sports. So I think, thankfully, there's some really exciting things that align from that, and we do benefit from the star power of key people within our business. Being very close to key parts of the administration. So yeah, we'll be using that to advance the business as much as we can, and we're just really grateful that mixed martial arts as a sport, gets such a big lift from the current administration.
Yes, we have some users using the raise hand tool. We won't be taking spoken questions today, but you are invited to type in your question using the Q&A tool. Hi, Nick. Could you please share a little more detail on how the program rollout with UFC Gym is going and how that may translate into projections for 2025 and beyond for this segment of your business?
Yeah, look, I think the best way for me to do that, which is still, again, all publicly available information, the deal we've done with the UFC is ultimately to roll out our programming to 150 plus of their locations. I mean, they've got hundreds more in development, but let's just talk about the 150 they've currently got. We've rolled out our program to 3 of those locations, with already great success, in recent months. We've got the next 10 have been identified, and pre-sales go on sale in the next week or so. And then after those 10, then we've got a focus program to roll out ultimately to get to all 150 locations. And so I think the really great financial results we've achieved already in 2025 have actually not come from much contribution at all from UFC Gym. So I think from my perspective, when I look at real upside growth opportunity, I'm delighted to know that we've barely scratched the surface in terms of that rollout. And UFC Gym, as I mentioned earlier, they're looking at delivering some new products and some new gym opportunities to a much larger audience that could increase the number of franchises they have by many hundreds in a shorter period of time. Well, we're already working with them on both software and product solutions that they can tie into that franchise offer. So obviously with Adam and Mark as part of our advisory board, we're working very closely with them. We are at the very, very earliest stages of what our growth looks like for that channel.
Given the great growth story, why is revenue still so low?
Yeah, what I would say is that clearly we're going to have our strongest revenue year ever this year, and based on how we're presently tracking, that's going to be many multiples of previous. What we did do last year was made sure that we spent the money we had available, the capital we had available to acquire really key elements of the technology that was going to make customer acquisition so much cheaper and more sustainable into the future. And so number one, obviously we acquired additional revenue streams, specifically the B2B SaaS. We also invested heavily in mixedmartialarts.com, which again is to this point still completely under leveraged for us. But again, with over 560,000 user profiles and over 5 million followers. And so from our perspective, all the pieces of the puzzle are now in place, and we've started really firing up that execution, which you've seen in first quarter, and we'll continue to see throughout the year, not just through B2C subscription growth, but also B2B subscription growth. And in that regard, it positions the business really well to meet our goals of being cash flow positive and break even by the end of calendar 25. And so in that regard, we couldn't have started the year better, to be honest. And with the upcoming technology and product releases that'll add more revenue opportunities to that, we could get there even faster.
Share price is down significantly since IPO. What are you going to do to increase shareholder value?
Yeah, completely understand. And obviously as founder and the largest shareholder in the company, nobody sort of feels that share price more than I do feels sometimes on a minute by minute basis. But I think I suppose having spent nearly 30 years of my career in capital markets now, what I have to focus on is what we're doing, which is the execution of our plan. Um, Again, if we get back to the fundamentals, this sector of mixed martial arts is absolutely booming. The fan base is enormous. All the growth metrics could not be more attractive. There's been huge amounts of investment in UFC copycats and what have you. We're still the only company that is going after aggregation of the fan and participant experience. And ultimately, over time, we believe that will enable us to become one of the most valuable companies in this vertical. So, what I'd say is that the company we are today is a profoundly more valuable company than the company we IPO'd. The fact is that the price is completely detached from the underlying enterprise value of the company. We've got to keep doing our work to obviously deliver and keep delivering results, which we've started the year incredibly strongly, and we have a really strong year ahead of us. We have to keep prosecuting that case, and we have to broaden our base of investors. We have to drive increased liquidity, and thankfully that's something that has certainly improved in the back half of the year, and ultimately the disconnect between the price and the underlying enterprise value will resolve itself. And so we just have to keep focused on doing what we're doing and executing as well as we are, particularly to start this year.
How do you see the rollout of UFC Gym Group programs progressing over the next year? Do you have an estimate of locations by next year this time?
Don't have an estimate yet, but let's just go back to what I talked about before. We've got the next 10 locations, and then there's another 25 locations, including international, that have been floated after that. So, that takes us towards, getting up towards 50, of 150. And so I think from our perspective, a really good outcome would be to get to 30 to 40%, in the coming 9 months, if you like, or the remainder of the year. From our perspective, what I love about the rollout, the product economics are great. The UFC charges UFC gyms deservedly, given the quality of their business, and facilities, charge a premium subscription. They also, all those subscriptions are paid up front. So once the period has been passed for refunds, which is pretty short, then there's absolutely zero churn on that revenue. And we know internally from UFC that there's huge demand to get our products rolled out as quickly as we can. Obviously, they're a much larger organization than we are, so we're managing it in a way that we don't want to disappoint any locations. So the rollout is being done in a very deliberate way, but it's started really well. And as I say, I think we can get to at least sort of 30 to 40% of location penetration during calendar 25. That's my best guess at the moment.
Can you tell us more about the Hype acquisition and how you see payment processing and CRM in terms of growth? Will it be a driving factor or more of an ancillary product?
Yeah, I think the best way to think about Hype, there's a number of elements of Hype that can be actually fully incorporated into BJJ Link, which is our Admin Plus tool. So I think that ultimately what Hype and BJJ Link delivered was clearly B2B subscription revenue, that more traditional SaaS style revenue, as well as a 100 to 200 basis point clip on transactions. What I do see is less so Hype being sold as a standalone subscription, but more the Hype technology being incorporated into an even broader suite of services and broader monetization opportunities for BJJ Link and Admin Plus, which is our core subscription, there. So obviously that acquisition then means that there's a bunch of tech capex we don't have to spend because a bunch of features were already built. I think another helpful way to think about the business, clearly our B2C subscription revenue on an income attribution basis is going to be our core product, and will deliver the majority of our revenues over the next couple of years because of UFC Gym and because of our existing footprint, and because these are chunky subscriptions. These are people paying $2,500 over 5 months for a training program. But ultimately, over time, what you're going to continue to see is year on year, the B2B subscriptions continue to grow on an attribution basis, from sort of 10% of gross revenues through 15, 20 and onwards. We see that as a very important part of our revenue stream, and delivering a lot more to us in the coming years. But it's important to note that that B2C subscriptions, because of how chunky they are, will continue to be, and because of the scale of the UFC Gym rollout, they'll continue to be, the more significant part in the medium term of our overall revenue composition.
What's the biggest value driver you see coming from BJJ Link?
Well, a number, but first and foremost, it's diversification of revenue stream. It's the really sticky SaaS revenue that you're delivering this software to a couple of hundred gyms. They run their entire business off that. It is the stickiest product. It's also a product that has very proudly been features have been continued to be added and improved and enhanced deliberately off the back of customer feedback. It is literally the most business owner centric software in the martial arts and combat sports space. So it delivers us diversified revenue. It delivers us very sticky, attractive revenue that attracts those SaaS multiples and those valuations. Obviously, it delivers splits on transactions. 100 basis points on transactions, depending on the type of subscription that the gym is paying. So that's another diversifier on a revenue standpoint. But I suppose what ultimately is going to make us far different to everybody else is that we're not out there just selling software, and we're not out there just selling marketing and training programs, and we're not out there just saying, well, we're going to deliver the best social media app for combat sports globally. We're out there delivering all three of those things, and that makes us completely unique to any other players in the market who are far more likely to be going after one of those sections. And so from our standpoint, we see this is when we talk about creating the cultural and commercial epicenter for mixed martial arts and combat sports. It's the delivery of all those elements from a fan experience basis, from a B2C subscription and participation and training basis, and then all the tools for business owners and coaches to attract new customers, run profitable businesses, and run their business efficiently. So it delivered to us a very, very important new revenue stream with a huge, with really significant functionality, which we're going to expand the footprint of gyms using that software, in the coming 12 months.
You referred to the underlying EV of the company. How are you valuing your EV?
Yeah, when I think about the valuation of the business, obviously you can, as we've spoken about before, we can look at embedded revenue opportunities. So what we know historically, the business has been able to generate for gyms, in terms of if we get a gym running our programs and using our software, then we can make an estimate of what ultimately what that gym can be worth for us on a fully realized revenue basis. And so, we know from programs, gross revenue based on our historical actuals, and we talked about this in our IPO deck back in the day, close to $50,000, of gross revenue annually. If we look then at, a user subscription and transaction splits from our software, then you look at saying, okay, that could be another couple of $1,000s a year per gym. So you start to go, okay, well, there's already over 803 active gyms on the platform. So what is the underlying revenue potential of looking at, you know, call it $55,000-$60,000 annually per gym of gross revenue, times by 800 odd gyms. So that is one way to look at what is the underlying embedded revenue opportunity in the platform we've built. And then the flip side of that is then also, well, what is the underlying enterprise value opportunity in the new social media platform, the 560,000 user profiles, and relaunching the tool of mixedmartialarts.com, this incredibly preeminent domain name, to engage and attract 700 million fans of martial arts and combat sports. And, obviously there's monetization opportunities around micro subscriptions, fan subscriptions there. And then you layer in, well, what do you think the opportunities are around, around sponsorship and other revenue partnerships, of which we're engaged in dialogue on those now. And so, off the top of my head, I don't have a sort of a core, a core enterprise value that I'm thinking of immediately. I just know that even if you think about, that sort of 55 to 60,000 embedded revenue opportunity per active gym, with 803 active gyms, layer in the fan elements, and all those other things I've spoken about, you've got, an enormously valuable platform. You've got a platform that, has been building for a lot of years and has significant first mover advantage, and obviously has underwritten growth through our partnerships with UFC Gym. So in that regard, I feel enormously excited about what 2025 can offer us, and again, that's why I know at the core we've got a business that is profoundly more valuable than the business we listed in last March, and ultimately the market will catch up to that. We just need to keep doing our work and telling our news.
Thank you very much for that, Nick. For more information on the Mixed Martial Arts Group, reach us at 1-800-RED-CHIP or email us at mma@redchip.com. Please visit the information page created by RedChip for the Mixed Martial Arts Group. It's mmainfo.com. There you can view and download the investor presentation and fact sheet and sign up for news alerts on the Mixed Martial Arts Group. RedChip is excited to announce the launch of Red Chat, our advanced AI assistant designed to empower investors with instant, in-depth insights on more than 2,000 small cap and micro cap stocks. Try it now on mmainfo.com or go to red.chat. Watch Small Stocks, Big Money, RedChip's program featuring exciting small cap companies, every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern on Bloomberg, USA. And join RedChip's next webinar. That'll be an introduction to Red Chat, and it will take place on Thursday, April 13th at 4:15 p.m. U.S. Eastern. Register for all RedChip webinars at redchip.com/events, where you can also view an archived version of today's MMA webinar. Thanks again to our many participants today, and thank you, Nick.
Terrific. Thanks, Craig, and thanks everyone for joining today.